Welcome back to the debate, the WBBZ Town Hall debate for the 27th Congressional District. The candidates now will resume answering questions. We start with Beth Parlato in our question number 6. And the question is, in general, New Yorkers pay a greater share of their income in taxes than residents in most other states. This has resulted in a net loss of population in this state over the last several years. How would you reverse this trend?
Well, I'm running for a federal office, and we cannot ignore the mismanagement of Albany. So we pay a higher share of taxes. Well, we have got to look at Albany. We've got to look at Governor Cuomo, and right now the complete power that he has with the Democratic-controlled Assembly and Legislature. So Albany mismanages everything that's going on in our state. We are losing people to lower tax states all across the nation, and we can't blame that on the federal government. Just like Governor Cuomo is doing right now, we were he says $6 billion, it's more like $12 billion in debt prior to COVID hitting. Now he's asking the federal government to bail him out at $64 billion. We cannot let and blame things on the federal government when our state completely mismanages our budget. Government's function, my personal opinion is, as a true conservative, we should not be having any more tax other than taxes that will fund legitimate services of government.
Thank you. And next, it would be Stefan Mychajliw on this issue.
No matter what professional position I hold in public office or in the private sector, the most important job I'll ever have is being a great husband and a great father. Family is incredibly important to me. You know, being the son of Polish and Ukrainian immigrants that came here the right way, I love being a husband and a father, and we have 2 boys under the age of 2, which is quite challenging. Most of my family's here in Buffalo, but for a lot of you, unfortunately, you have to get in a car or hop on a plane to see your children, or even worse, your grandkids. And I want to turn that around. And it's insulting that Governor Cuomo said the weather is the reason why you're hopping on a plane to see your grandchildren. It's the economic climate here. It's taxes, it's overregulation, it's government spending. So in Congress, the first thing I'm going to do is try and cut your taxes and put more money in your pockets so that your children and grandchildren don't leave our region, and so that you don't have to get on a plane to see your family. And we have this economic resurgence here in our area by cutting taxes and adding more jobs to the economy.
Thank you. And next is Nate McMurray.
We fund the entire country. Everyone listening should understand, for every buck you spend or you pay in federal taxes, you get about 75 cents back. Where does that money go? Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi. We are funding the entire country. So yes, is there mismanagement in Albany? I'll say yes, absolutely. But there's also massive mismanagement on the national level. So how do we fix this? We have to have a representative that's going to fight for New York. Now, we had one, Chris Collins, who voted for a tax bill that put Social Security at risk, put Medicare at risk, and also put New York State at risk by removing exemptions for state and local taxes. I can't believe it happened. I can't believe there wasn't more of an outlash against Mr. Collins for voting for a tax bill that punished New York State. And I won't do that. I'll be fighting for New York State when I go to Washington.
And now we'll hear from Duane Whitmer.
New York State's in dire straits with one-party rule. Dems have been in charge for a while, and Andrew Cuomo looks like he's not going anywhere. He has no incentive to do better because people keep voting him in office. Unfortunately, there's not much the federal government can do here. The solution would be asking an accountant and a small business owner about taxes is going to take me more than a minute. But the federal government should be cutting taxes for small businesses, abolishing corporate welfare and handouts and subsidies for big corporations, evidenced by the Buffalo Billion, which is now worth significantly less than $1 billion of taxpayer waste. Cutting taxes on small businesses, which allows people to open up businesses, cutting regulations to allow people to start their own business easier, keeping more money in their pocket, growing their own company, working hard to keep their money. That's what the federal government can really do in New York State. Unfortunately, we are kind of stuck with Cuomo, and not much the whole federal government can do there.
Thank you for those answers. The next question is like one of the issues that has occupied the news for almost 35 years, since the mid-1980s, is global warming or climate change. What's your view on this issue? Is it a problem that is caused by humans? And how would you be addressing this situation? And we will start with Stefan Mychajliw.
I've spent my entire life hunting, fishing with my family, and protecting and loving and respecting this beautiful earth that God created for all of us is an incredibly important thing. But I think we do have to maintain a very healthy balance of loving and protecting the world that we live in, the place we call home for many of our brothers and sisters across this planet, but also too not going too far when it comes to overregulation, when it comes to killing businesses. So as a Catholic and as a Christian, yes, of course, fundamentally, we have to do our level best to protect this earth, and we all enjoy it with our families. Again, as a hunter and as a fisherman, of course we do that. But in Washington, I think government sometimes goes way too far when it comes to the over-regulation and crippling businesses, and they go too far, and they hurt companies and they hurt families. But I think we have to have a healthy balance of protecting our environment and not going too far at the other end of the spectrum when it comes to over-regulation that hurts businesses.
And next we will hear from Nate McMurray.
Well, let me answer the question directly. You asked if global warming was a man-made thing, and I will say yes. That's what the science tells us. And you don't need to have a master's degree or a PhD to understand this. They can directly measure the level of carbon in the air versus the increase in temperature on our Earth. Now, let's say you don't believe that. Let's say it's not important to you. Well, maybe you believe that these businesses shouldn't be killing us. They shouldn't be dumping in our rivers. They shouldn't be taking advantage of us. Western New York for too long has been taken advantage of by some of the most despicable corporations that have polluted our land, from Love Canal to Tonawanda Coke. Now, I'm a business person. I've been in business my entire life. You do have to have a balance, but you also have to face the reality we face. And our world is changing. And there can be opportunity there. Opportunity to invest in new technologies like the many unions that support me want to invest in and want to be part of. And there's business chances to be had for the people of Western New York if we take this as an opportunity rather than just a threat.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Duane Whitmer.
Global warming and climate change is an issue, yes. And one of the simplest solutions is actually one that both Republicans and Democrats and libertarians should all agree on. One of the biggest polluters in this world is the American military complex. So if we start ending these foreign wars and bringing our troops home, we can start cutting back on mass amounts of pollution, quite simply. The issue you have is my friends and family went overseas, died, and some of them didn't come back, and some that did come back weren't the same. So Halliburton and Dick Cheney can make $1 billion. We need to start putting people in office that aren't bought by big corporations, aren't bought by Halliburton, aren't bought by defense companies, but actually care about the people that they're sending. Like I said, my friends and family going over there, it's not a great time. Wouldn't wish that on my enemy. So one way to stop pollution is to actually cut the military, cut the foreign wars, bring our troops home.
Thank you. And Beth Parlato.
Yes, I also believe that we can't dispute the science. So I am going to agree with maybe only one thing with Nate McMurray, and we can't dispute the science. And I love this nation, and I love our country, and we have to protect our earth and our environment. We do. And as we continue to send career politicians to government, they will just continue to toe the party line, and whatever the GOP is going to tell them to do, they're going to follow. Or even whatever the Democratic Party is going to tell them to do, they're going to follow. So what we need is real people that are going to be able to come up with real solutions, because I am concerned about our planet. I live in the smack dab right in the middle of New York 27 in the town of Darien on 30 acres with a pond. We hunt on our property, we fish on our property, love going to the beaches on our boat and Canandaigua Lake, and we have got to be concerned, but we have to stop playing party politics. And those individuals have got to be able to come together in government on a bipartisan agreement and come up with creative solutions to be able to fix what's going on in with our environment.
Thank you. The next question has to do with President Trump. Every time you hear about President Trump, people have a very strong opinion. Either he's the worst president ever or the best president ever. He's either doing a great job or he's a disaster. He is very polarizing. Everyone has an opinion. That polarization in your candidacy, is that going to help you or is that going to hurt you? How would you weigh in on that? And what do you think of President Trump and the job that he's doing? And we're going to start with Nate McMurray on this question.
Well, first I want to congratulate Beth Parlato's last answer. I think it showed a lot of courage. And I don't agree with her on most everything, but she has a backbone, and I have to say that. Beyond that, listen, President Trump, I do not agree with him. He's somebody that I will fight, and I'll have a backbone myself. He has led, take the emotion out of it, look at the facts. Worst economy in generations, millions of people out of work, division in the streets, cities burning, 100,000 plus dead, praising of Putin, saying he believes him over the FBI. And now we have revelations that he may have talked with President Xi about helping him with his re-election. I mean, it's a disaster. And even if that does hurt me, and it very well may hurt me in this election, I understand that, I feel a historical duty to say so. Now, we have to go a different way. I want everyone out there to listen, to ask yourself, not if your life is better since President Trump was elected, is our country better? Do you feel more proud of our country?
Thank you. And Duane Whitmer.
As a third-party candidate, everything hurts us. My view on Trump is this: he's one person, he's one man in one office. I put the blame more on Congress and the career politicians, which is why I chose to run for this office. Congress has the ability to make a lot of changes rapidly, and instead of blaming someone for your problems and using him to get reelected, they're not getting anything solved because they can blame, I botched that, I'm sorry. Essentially what you have right now is people are blaming Trump for their failures and their problems and trying to win re-election. They're going back to their districts and using him to fire up voters to obtain votes. You have a stalemate, and that's because you only have two parties running the show. This is why I run. We need a third party to provide competition and to provide an outlet for people who are frustrated. 100 million people didn't vote in 2016. That could have decided an election to any party. We need to find ways to get them motivated and get them voting again.
And next, Beth Parlato.
I supported the president in 2016. I was advocating on Fox News for the president for 6 months prior to his election, and I did vote for him in November, and I do support the president now. Yes, the country is divided, and there's a lot of polarization, a lot of division, but we cannot blame that on one man. I don't care who's sitting in the White House, whether it's a Democrat, Republican, Independent. One person is not responsible for all of the division that's going on in our country. I agree with Duane that we have a Congress that isn't doing their job. Everything is so political. I am so sick of the talking points on both sides of the aisle. Everything is political. Nothing can get done. A bill can't even get passed without it being along partisan lines. We need people who are principled, who are going to stand on their convictions, whether or not they're going to toe the party line, to be able to get real solutions and get things done for the people of New York 27.
And now, Stefan Mychajliw.
We are living through some very difficult, divisive times, but I believe wholeheartedly that America's better days are ahead, and that's why I'm running for Congress. And I have a positive message for you. I have not run a single attack ad because, quite frankly, I think you deserve better. So I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to do in Congress as a true conservative and a supporter of President Trump. I'm going to lead America to a better place, and I'm going to listen to a lot of different voices and come up with solutions that brings our country to a much better place than where we are right now. Beth Parlato and I are true conservatives. We're the real deal. And again, look at my record. Back in 2016, when it wasn't very politically popular for me to do so, I campaigned for President Trump, even though I knew it would hurt me in the next election. And look at the economy. The Trump tax cuts are working. In pre-coronavirus, we've had one of the strongest economies in the history of the United States of America. So I'm going to Congress to work with President Trump. And when you vote in the Republican primary on June 23rd, just remember, who was the person that campaigned hard for President Trump in 2016 when it wasn't popular? And I was not afraid to say his name.
Okay, thank you for that. And the next question has got to do with term limits. Many officials, elected officials in Washington, serve for many terms, and some, even when they pass away, their family members take over their seats. This is a trend that really favors incumbents, and in Washington, that's basically the system. What do you think about the possibility of term limits for all offices? If you're elected, how would you view your future in office? Would you commit to only serving a limited amount of time? And in general, do you think there should be term limits for all offices? And we're going to start with Duane Whitmer on this question.
Yes, term limits are an absolute necessity to prevent career politicians from making $1 million while doing absolutely nothing. There are members of Congress who've been in Congress since the 80s who have not sponsored a bill and done nothing but whine and complain. I'd actually like to take this a step farther. If elected, I would actually push a bill that eliminates congressional pensions. Why do they get a pension when the average American does no longer get one? And I would also eliminate their health plan. Why does the average American have a regular employee-sponsored health plan, and elected officials such as Congress gets this Cadillac plan that the average American doesn't have? If we're there to truly represent the people, let's be one of the people. It's quite simple. It's simple as that. So that's my answer to that. Term limits, yes, and let's take it even further.
Okay, thank you, Duane. And next we'll hear from Beth Parlato.
Yes, I 100% believe in term limits. I signed the U.S. Term Limits Pledge, and what I want to say is it's not just lip service. There's a lot of career politicians out there that's their lifestyle. They have to continue getting elected. So they may tell you that they've signed the Term Limits Pledge. They may tell you that they're in support of term limits, but when push comes to shove, they're still running for re-election. They do not term limit themselves out. I signed the Term Limits Pledge. It's for 3 terms in Congress. I am committed to that. I think it's the only way we're going to get effective, real change in our country. We have people sitting in Albany for 30, 40 years. We have people sitting in Washington for 30, 40 years, and nothing is getting done. Nothing's getting done for the people. It's an absolute necessity to stop the corruption and the swamp that is politics in the United States. And so I 100% am supportive of term limits, and I also, if a bill did not get passed, I have agreed to term limit myself out.
Thank you, Beth. And next, Stefan Mychajliw.
Nate and I have a lot in common, that we come from humble beginnings. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I'm the son of a typewriter repairman, and my mom was a factory worker. I've had to work incredibly hard for anything I've ever had in my life. You know, I went to Syracuse University. I couldn't rely on my mom or pops to fund my tuition, so I washed dishes in my dining hall. I'm certainly not the son of a millionaire or a billionaire, and everything that I've done, I've had to work for it. And the one thing that my parents taught me was, through God's grace, a great education, and hard work, you can do anything you want in the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. So I've spent most of my life in the private sector as a taxpayer watchdog and giving back, and as Erie County Comptroller giving back. I release my tax returns every single year. I took a pay cut to enter public service, and so I oppose career politicians and people who spend their entire lives in politics. I would support term limits. We have them now also. They're called elections. But I think it's really important to be a citizen legislator, to work in the private sector, serve your country, and then go back to the private sector.
And thank you for that. And finally, Nate McMurray, how do you weigh in on term limits?
Well, I didn't know, Stefan, I didn't know your background, actually, and that I have respect for your background and your beginnings. Listen, I passed term limits as a small-town supervisor. It's the first thing I did, and it was not easy. The Republicans voted against me on term limits in my small town. I had one who I had a pressure to flip to do it, and it was difficult. And I'll do the same thing when I go to Washington. I don't expect to do this forever, I think people who try to do it forever burn out and they run out of good ideas. I think Chris Jacobs said he was going to go to Albany to pass term limits. You remember his commercial? 2 words, term limits? Well, he never did anything for term limits. He never even tried to do anything for term limits. So, like Beth said, a lot of people talk. I've actually taken action on the local level, and I'll take action on the national level. I believe we need new ideas, new faces, new blood into our government. That's what the Founding Fathers also wanted, and I'll fight for it when I go to Washington.
Okay, well, thank you all for those answers to the questions. We're out of time for questions now, so we're going to go with closing statements. You'll each have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we're going to start with Duane Whitmer.
On Tuesday, you have a choice to send a message across the country. Currently in Congress, there is one Libertarian Congressman, Justin Amash, who switched his registration over. This would be a historic victory to send the first elected Libertarian into Congress. This starts a movement across the country where voters say they're fed up with how this country is being treated, how we're being treated by politicians, and we're sick of watching the clown show that is the duopoly bicker, fight, blame each other for their problems, use us as pawns, send us overseas, and take our taxpayer dollars while their pockets get bigger. This is a chance to send a very strong message here from Western New York that we're sick of it and we're ready to start something different.
Thank you, Duane Whitmer, Libertarian candidate. And now Beth Parlato.
Yes, thank you. So I've been in this race for almost a year, and as the outsider, I call myself the critical outsider. We cannot continue to send career politicians to Washington that don't serve us. Let's look at the history of this seat. There's a clear choice coming up in the Republican primary, which is the election I'm running in. And this seat has been tainted for many, many years. We continue to send rich career politicians, and then they end up leaving in disgrace. We cannot make that, we cannot take that chance again in New York 27. I have lived in this district for 53 years. I also come from humble beginnings. My father was a collision man, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I was the very first one to even go to college in my entire family. And look at, now I'm standing here running for Congress. We need regular, hardworking Americans that are principled and believe in freedom and believe in liberty and aren't afraid to stand up for truth. We need transparency in government, and we also need accessibility. When was the last time you had access to your congressman? We haven't had that in a very long time. It's my desire to bring that back, so I urge you to vote Parlato, pick Parlato on June 23rd.
Thank you, Beth Parlato. And next we're going to hear from Stefan Mychajliw.
I want to thank WBBZ, Nate McMurray, Beth Parlato, and Duane Whitmer for this great debate. It may sound a little corny, but this is what makes America great. No mudslinging, no attacks. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians all told you our values and what we want to do in Washington. So for all of you who are voting in the Republican primary on June 23rd, if you're going to support one of my opponents, please vote only once. But if you do vote with the true conservative as someone with a record of results for conservatives and for President Trump, I would be honored with your vote. In Congress, we need to get to work. We need to work for you. And we need leaders who are going to work together and listen to people with different voices and come up with solutions to make America a better place. And I do not believe that our best days are behind us. I believe our best days are ahead of us. And I will work like hell to make sure that we do make America that shining city on a hill again. And I would be honored with your vote on June 23rd in the Republican primary.
Thank you, Stefan. And finally, Nate McMurray.
I'm going to break it down as simply as I can. You can't vote for Chris Jacobs. Well, you can, but you're going to get the same thing over and over again. We've been here before. Why do you think he's not here today? He thinks he's got this. He thinks he can throw some money at it. His billionaire family can throw some money at it, and he can just waltz in. He thinks he was born to do this. And I'm proud of Beth and Stefan and Duane for standing up to him. And I'm trying to stand up to him too. He doesn't own this seat. And if you give it to him, it'll be a reinforcement that people like him can do whatever they want to get elected. I'm asking you to vote for one of these other ones in the primary, because if he wins, and the special, vote for me, because if he wins that special, you think you're ever going to get those billions of dollars out of that seat? He'll be in there forever. Talk about term limits. You'll never get rid of that guy. Vote for one of these three, or vote for Steph or Beth in in the Republican primary, and then let's have a real match in November. That's all I'm asking. Do not let this guy take this seat. He doesn't own it.
That's all the time we have for this special WBBZ TV Town Hall debate. I hope it was informative for you, the voters. Our goal was to add some substance to the process. We urge you to get out and exercise one of your most important rights and vote. Thanks again, and good night.